Hi, I'm Paula Stebbins Becker, and first of all, I just want to express how grateful I am to be chosen as one of the artists in the 8 Visions exhibit here at the Attleboro Arts Museum, and I'm really looking forward to the show. I began weaving in the early 80s when I was in college, a BFA in textile design at UMass Dartmouth. And I originally thought that I would be designing for prints, as I was very interested in illustration and pattern making. And I took my first weaving class in 1981, and my teacher, Sandra Brownlee, really inspired me to choose weaving as my focus. And I just have stayed with it ever since. After I graduated from college, I worked for many years in the textile design industry. I worked for several mills, mostly on the East Coast in Philadelphia, in the Worcester area, and then also Fall River. And one memory that stays with me related to working in the textile mill is just the connections that I made, not only with the designers and other people that I worked with in the studio, but with the weavers. And early on, we were still designing on paper. The looms weren't digital yet, and we would complete our designs. They would go down to the technical area where they punched the jacquard cards and prepared them for weaving on the loom. And we would get a phone call from the weaver himself or herself and asking us to go down to the loom to see our sample be woven. And I just loved that so much because it was just like it became tangible, it became real. Working it out on paper, thinking about it, drafting your weaves and, in your head, and then having that opportunity to go down and with the weaver at the loom and see it suddenly magically appear thread by thread. And the other thing that was interesting about that experience too was that the weaver would sometimes collaborate with us and say, hey, I think that red could be a little more orange, or they would make suggestions about, just simple things, or suggest that the weave needed to be a little tighter. So early on, just working with the weavers at the loom, the industrial looms, it wasn't a hand loom, they were 54-inch wide industrial looms, just stays with me still, and I'm really grateful for that experience. So I worked in the industry for about 6-7 years, and then took a sabbatical to go on to grad school. I had this just this idea of, I love designing, but I wanted to explore more the fine art of weaving in textiles. So I applied to various schools, and I was very fortunate to have been accepted and attend a college in Michigan called Cranbrook Academy of Art. And it was a really special place. Gerhard Nodell was there at the time, and there were 12 or 15 we were fiber department, grads, all coming from different backgrounds. And there were 2 of us, or maybe 3, that had studied textile design. But I have to say that experience was exciting, but also extremely challenging. And it pushed me in ways that I don't think I ever would have explored if I hadn't had that experience. I knew I wanted to weave. I wanted to stick with weaving, but the cloth needed to be more expressive. It needed to be more personal, and something that connected with me or the world around me in a different way than a yardage of fabric that was sold for furniture or draperies or functional use. So it was there actually in the early 90s that I began to look at actually textiles that I had collected over the years, little fragments of pieces of things that I always just thought were beautiful, and I had them with me, and I was making books and collages and working with them in a variety of ways. And then one day I started to pull the threads apart. I pulled them from the original cloth, and I thought about, wow, you know, this is really interesting way to put, you know, these pieces that inspire me together in a different way through weaving. So I was unraveling a lot, pulling lots of threads and collecting them. And at the same time, I want to mention that my grandmother had dementia and was in a nursing home. And I started to think about Nana and like the ways that she was sort of, you know, through the early stages of dementia, memories were coming and going, fading, breaking apart in weird ways that and maybe coming back together in ways that were not familiar to her or to us anymore, and even her words and her language. And ironically, my mom, 20 years later, was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So this whole process of deconstructing, unraveling fabrics into a single thread or a series of threads has always connected to memory for me from that time going forward. And just, you know, thinking about how a weaver takes the thread, sets up the loom, weaves the cloth, maybe has a pattern, a structure, or, you know, a color that is put together in a certain way that makes that cloth unique. And then for me to take that same cloth and then break it apart, pull it apart, reusing the deconstructed threads, the unraveled threads in a different way that connects to memory. I mean, a physical memory of making the cloth, unraveling the cloth, and also a cerebral memory of connected to my mom and my grandmother, and how memories fade and memories get lost, and, you know, through age, just through time, and how we reconstruct those memories. So in this body of work that you'll see in the 8 Visions show, I have a series of weavings that involve threads that are taken from batik hemp textiles that were woven in Thailand. And these are just a couple of little pieces. And this piece actually is connected with the piece next to me. And they're hemp threads that were set up on the loom, woven by the hand weaver in Indonesia. In Thailand. And then after the weaving process is completed, they are painted or block printed or drawn with a wax resist, which is called batik, and then dyed in a dye. In this case, it was dyed in indigo, so you have the beautiful blue with a very, very subtle pattern. This panel is only half of the threads that were in the original cloth. So when you come to see the show, you can get a close look at it, and it's very, very subtle, and you'll see how it's transformed from the original woven cloth with both horizontal and vertical threads coming together. So I hope that this was helpful in explaining the process a little bit, and I look forward to maybe meeting some of you at the opening. Thank you.